Our church's mission statement is this: we exist to multiply gospel-centered disciples, small groups, and local churches that bless the city, the region, and the world. And we see that mission as following the Great Commission of Matthew 28. So multiplication is part of our DNA. It's a good thing, but it also comes with a cost. Making disciples is costly. It's not easy. And it's definitely not easy to plant churches. So when it comes to multiplying our city groups, how can we do so in a wise and thoughtful and sustainable and even a joyful way? That's what this video is about. Let's start by defining our terms. By multiplication, I mean that city group leaders should seek to create an inviting place for outsiders to find Christian community, so that their growing group could raise up even more leaders and groups. Now notice in this definition, multiplication is primarily about hospitality. It's about making sure everyone has a community, everyone has a family. It's also about opportunity. It's giving people the opportunity to become leaders and to use their gifts to bless others. City groups move through different seasons, and this life cycle often has a recognizable pattern with 4 stages: beginning, growth, routine, and multiplication. I got these concepts from Dave Addington. I think it's a really helpful framework. So as I describe these stages, think about your own city group and think about where you're at in this cycle. The first stage is the beginning, and this is the exciting and nervous stage when the group is first coming together. It's usually a smaller group, so you're learning to trust one another. You're getting to know each other. As a leader, it's helpful for you to invite feedback, to create a culture of openness and collaboration. Hey, we're making this group together. This will help you all clarify your expectations for how the group is going to work. You can also model vulnerability by just being yourself and not hiding your struggles, which will encourage others to do the same. Then the group experiences growth. More people check out the group and they're wondering, is this the right place for me? Am I going to be accepted here, or should I go somewhere else? Now, as you add more people, you're also adding diversity, which is great and worth celebrating, and it can bring some challenges. You have more misunderstandings, you have more conflict, and this gives the group the opportunity to resolve that conflict in a healthy and respectful way. Now that you're out of that initial starting phase, you can finally establish some rhythms and get into a groove. But gradually, the rhythms become routine. Not much has changed for a year or two. Sure, some people left and some people joined, but it feels like same old, same old. Now, on the one hand, there's safety to that stability, but it can also turn stale. These groups need to challenge themselves to stay on mission and recenter themselves on who they are. They need to strive to know each other on a deeper level. Yes, we're friends, but how can we push each other towards holiness and maturity? These groups need to take risks, try new things, explore new rhythms, experiment. Otherwise, at least in my experience, these groups will fizzle out. The leaders will get tired, the group members will get bored, or they'll get frightened when things start to change. And this is why we need the 4th stage. Multiplication comes from a decision to seize an opportunity rather than stagnate. It's a choice to say, as healthy as our group is, it won't stay healthy forever if we never change. So for the long-term health of these disciples, we're going to send out a new group with new leaders. Now we'll discuss the how in a moment, but for now, I want you to see that multiplication brings both groups back to stage 1, which breathes fresh life into the original group and then sets up the new group to grow. When you send out a core group with new leaders, the original group doesn't stay the same. They need to figure out, who are we with this new identity? And you get some of that excitement back. What do we want to do differently than we did before? This is City Group 2.0, a new beginning. So here's the practical question. How do we multiply our small group? There's a principle I want you to keep in the back of your mind, and that's that both groups need to leave well and start well. So I'm going to describe a process that has worked for me. It's worked for other groups that have multiplied successfully. There are 3 steps with 2 words in each step. Number 1, prayer and planning. Number 2, discussion and decisions. Number 3, identity and invitation. First, prayer and planning. When you sense that it's time to multiply, or even before that, begin to pray. Pray with your co-leader and or your apprentice, the person you've been mentoring to lead a group someday. Pray for guidance, for God's will to be done. Pray for unity throughout the process so that this multiplication would be good for everyone. Pray that as these new groups begin meeting separately, there would be new people who can find community. And then, as you pray, start talking about plans. When should we aim to multiply? Who might be part of this new core group? How should we communicate these things to the group in a thoughtful way? Now, I'm here to help you with this, and let me just emphasize now that it's better to be thinking and talking about this ahead of time rather than having these conversations in a panicked, we need to do this yesterday sort of way. After you have some initial plans in place, it's time for discussion and decisions. Have a family talk with the whole city group about multiplication and what this could look like. Now, this can sometimes invite strong reactions, so we'll talk in a moment about some barriers that people have. The goal of this discussion should be 1, clarity. Hey, this is why we're multiplying. 2, listening. How do you think we could do this well? And 3, reassurance. We're still going to be friends and family after this. Soon after that family chat, the old and the new leaders should approach a few people about being part of the new core team. A new city group can start with just 6 people. So there's no need to split the group in half or to do the high school gym class draft ickiness. This is strategic and relational. I think that you would be a great member for a core team, and I want to get to know you better. Again, these can be tricky conversations, so if you need any advice or even my presence there, that's why I'm here. Once all the planning and discussions are settled, it's time to lean into identity and invitation. Both the new group and the old group can have one final party together, and then they're meeting separately to talk about the things in stage 1, beginning. What do we want this group to be? What are our rhythms? What are our team leadership roles? Our mission? Both groups need to do this so that both groups have a renewed sense of purpose and a recognition of their unique identity. We are not the same group that we used to be. And then finally, you go public. You get up on the city group boards and you start inviting people to join. And now our church has 2 fresh city groups with room to grow. Now, the elephant in the room is that multiplication can bring up a lot of barriers in people's minds. Maybe even some of you have had bad experiences with it. And so it's important to acknowledge those emotions and ask, okay, I've had these experiences, but am I still committed to multiplying disciples, small groups, and churches? Acknowledging these feelings in your family talk is important as well. And then you can come up with some ways to make sure that these concerns are addressed as your group multiplies. As I've talked and listened with former and present leaders, here are 3 of the biggest barriers that I hear. First, and most importantly, multiplication sounds to many people like they're about to lose their closest friends. These relationships that I've built up, now they're going to go away. And the other side of the coin is that I'll be left with people in my group who are difficult or draining. Now, a couple of comments may be helpful here. First, if the goal is for both groups to be healthy, then that means that the original leaders need to prioritize keeping those people who give them life. Maybe there's one couple in your group who you connect with deeply. It would not be wise to have them leave the group. Now, it may be complicated, like if that couple is the new set of leaders, or if the new group will be in their neighborhood. The principle here, though, is that both groups need life-giving people for the leaders. Your closest friends, should often stay, so that even if some of your friends move to the new group, you still have established and deep friendships. The second consideration is that multiplying a group gives you the opportunity for more friendships, not fewer. Just speaking personally, I was part of a group that multiplied when we had about 10 couples. And after we started the new group, a few new couples joined, and they ended up becoming some of our closest friends. We would have never gotten to know them without multiplying, and we were still friends with folks in the original group. What I want you to see is that the Lord can use multiplication to improve your relationships. It's an act of trust that God will fill this new community in a way that is a blessing for all involved. A second common barrier is the awkwardness of deciding who goes in which group. And it can definitely be awkward unless you work hard at alleviating fears and making it clear that this is not a popularity contest. Now, I can't give you specific advice about how to balance the group dynamics well, because while it's important to consider things like talkative versus quiet people and other factors like that, really what matters most is that there is a sense of trust and love in both groups. And like a church plant, the original group should joyfully commission and send out the new group to make disciples and grow. I've found personally that having that mindset offsets or even eliminates the social jostling that can sometimes happen. One last thing here, and this is getting at the heart. Some of us feel fear anytime we experience change. Now, some of you are the opposite. You love to shake things up. But a lot of us, and myself included, we like to keep things the way they are because we have an assumption that any change will bring us to a worse state than we were in before. And yet, I bet most of us can look back at times of change and upheaval in our lives, and now, with the benefit of hindsight, we can say, you know what? I'm better than I was. I grew. I matured. I learned. I experienced new challenges and new joys. Now remember, groups that stay in the routine stage usually die out. So it is for our good and it is for the glory of God's kingdom that we make multiplication a priority. When we keep this in mind, along with faith in God's good plan, we'll be able to make changes without fear, maybe even make changes with expectancy and excitement. Whew, that was a lot of information, and as a reward, here's a baby. Just as a little reminder that multiplication isn't about losing something, it's about gaining something. Right, buddy? Yeah. I know that this was a long video. Thank you for watching it. You may need to rewatch it and process it with your co-leader, process it with me. As you watch it and think about it, think about these questions. Number one, who in my city group can I be investing in right now who could lead a group in the future? And then number two, where is my city group in the life cycle? What stage are we in right now? Till next time, leaders, say goodbye.